buy and sell homes. A federal
Brian, think big behind you. Is that a real wall or is that a virtual background?
Virtual.
It looks real, realer than most. I like it.
I spent a lot of time trying to find something that looked real. It's not easy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it definitely looks real. It looks good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Everyone coming in, Jordan Weber here with Z Buyer, but I've got Brian with me. Brian, not only are you ambassador through LCA stepping in on this, but you also have been a Z Buyer user for many years now, off and on. You started with Eva way back when, and then have been using us. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, I've been using you way back when. I don't know the actual start date. It's been that long. I'm going to guess 2014. So maybe 2015, somewhere in that range. And it's been one of our most consistent lead sources that we've used over the last 7 or 8 years as we go into in real estate. And there's lots of different ways that we use it. We use it both from the investment side, as far as buying investment properties, working with investors, and as well as getting listings directly where we're listing property. A little bit about me. I've been a national real estate coach since 2015 and really enjoy working with people. My main focus nowadays is more on mindset than it is on process, but still no process. We still do a lot with process. I run a team in Arkansas. We have about 20 to 25 agents at any given point in time. And yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Brian, we're talking about today, buying leads through the holiday, lead generation. Does it make sense? And this was brought up because our team has been talking with agents and we're hearing a lot of uncertainty this year more than ever, especially with so many other factors and just things changing in the market right now. But agents are hesitant to buy leads throughout the wintertime or to increase or to do anything. We're hearing a lot of people saying they're trying to put back right now rather than invest more. And this is something that we always face, but I'm curious, just from the beginning, wintertime, does your business change at all? Do you slow down on lead generation or do you pick up or does it stay consistent?
We try and be consistent, and we try and be consistent throughout the whole year. And there's multiple reasons for that. So, one of the hardest energies to do in life is start energy. In other words, getting things moving, getting things going. So for me, if I were to take a lead source, we'll say lead buyer, a Z buyer, and just say, bam, I'm not going to do this for 60, 90, 120 days, whatever the number is for someone who's considering lowering their costs. The problem is for me to ramp that back up. Let's say I say December 1st, I'm going to stop doing that. And then I'm going to start on March 1st. Well, on March 1st, I have zero momentum. I've got nothing moving forward. And if you believe, I don't necessarily believe, but if you believe that spring is going to be a better time for you as an agent, then you need to lead generate now. And I don't know a better way to say that. You have to have that consistency and that momentum. Now, does that mean that you're going to make as much money every single month? I wish I could tell you that I made the exact same amount of money every month with every deal, but that's just not reality of real estate. And, uncertainty. I hear a lot about uncertainty, but here's the reality. I would take this market 100 times more than 2008, 9, 10. We have people who are looking to buy. We have not a huge amount of inventory, but that's changing throughout the country. And at the end of the day, what I see more than anything else over the last 90 days is that buyers have accepted the reality. If you go back 6, 12, even 18 months, as the interest rates start to climb up, everyone's like, freaking out. All the buyers are like, well, I'm not going to buy now. It's a bad time to buy. Sellers aren't going to sell. It's a bad time to sell. I don't believe any of that was true, but that was the perception. I believe we finally accepted over the last 60 to 90 days what the new normal is. Now, that's going to change at some time in the future. And then we're going to have this same webinar doing, because the market's changed again. But ultimately, no, I don't believe that this is a bad market. It's a more challenging market than, say, 2021, when we were looking that way. And I think one of the things that happens both with agents and with the public is they look at things from a contrast frame. And here's what I mean by that. 2021, basically you had a pulse, a real estate license, and a car, and you could sell a house. It wasn't hard. People were begging you to help them buy and sell houses. It was a very interesting time. 2023 is not that, but that doesn't make 2023 a bad market. It just makes it a different market where you have to have different tactics.
Absolutely. One thing you mentioned there a second ago was, your income isn't the same every month. The amount of closings isn't the same every month. But I think the whole concept about this buying leads throughout the winter time and the holidays is if your leads are consistent every month, your funnel's consistently growing and building.
Yes.
Now, this time of year, anyone can argue, people are less likely to buy or sell at Christmas time. And there's some validity to that. The other thing that you said was, your spring market, some people think it'll be better. Some people think it'll be worse. I think as agents, a lot of that responsibility somewhat falls on them and what they do during these months. And do they shut down and hibernate, or does business keep going? Are they still prospecting and building these relationships?
Yeah, I'm actually going to argue with you here for a second, Jordan. You said that it's somewhat dependent on what the agent does. I'll argue that it's 100% dependent on what the agent does. So if you have a belief system that you are controlled by the market, then you're in trouble. I can tell you right now, if your belief is I have to have X, Y, and Z happen for me to be successful, then there's a really good chance you're not going to be successful because X, Y, and Z may not happen. What successful long-term agents have to do is understand what I have to do to pivot in any particular market. And I'll just give you an interesting way to look at this. There are probably people who are watching this webinar right now going, oh gosh, yeah, I appreciate what Brian and Jordan are saying, but I'm still going to shut down. And that's okay. That's their choice. And you make whatever choice you want that's best for you and your business. But here's what's interesting. I think Thanksgiving is kind of a marking point for me. And I watch from about a week before Thanksgiving until about January 2nd. In my experience, about 40 to 50% of the agents quit. And what I mean quit is that they shut down. They go to a bunch of holiday parties. They do things, and those things are great. But here's a perspective, and as someone who is continuing to do business during this time, it's frustrating. And what I mean by that is Thanksgiving in my world used to be 1 day long. Christmas used to be 2 days long. Thanksgiving is now 2 weeks and Christmas is a month. And I think that a lot of people do that shutdown thing. What's my point here? My point is let's say that there's 20% less sales in January and February than there are in June. And I haven't looked at that specific data for every market, obviously, or even nationwide. I can look at it in my own market and realize that there's somewhere between a 15 to 20% drop in actual closings in January and February over July and August, which is the peak in our market. What's my point there? Well, if you have a 20% decrease in sales, but you have a 50% decrease in competition, it's actually a better time to sell. And what I mean sell, to be an agent, to go out and show property, to help people. And I can tell you right now, I've worked with so many clients over the last 20 years who said, Brian, I want to be in my house, my new house, before Thanksgiving. Probably a little late to put somebody under contract today to be in their new house for Thanksgiving. But the other thing they say is, hey, I want to be in my new house during Christmas. Great. So there's still a huge amount of people who are wanting to move. It's just maybe it's a smaller percentage. But again, I really honestly believe we have less competition now. So that's one of the reasons that I think you could actually have your best months be the winter months if you get out of that mentality that the only way that I can be successful is to work in a market that is really high paced and fast paced, and that's coming to me. Work on your mindset around that. I'm telling you right now, you have a lot less competition in the last quarter of the year and into the first quarter.
Absolutely. And we hear a lot of beginning months of the year, February, March in particular, agents coming to us and they're almost scrambling. All of a sudden, their amount of inbound responses to their website, calls, whatever it may be, is down. And these are typically the people that shut down during the winter months. They canceled their service with us, and they're telling us they canceled other lead spend and they really went into hibernation, and they're losing market share in their markets. They're
Yes.
losing the chance to build these relationships with potential clients that would typically be the February, March people that really start to look and get serious. And because they weren't there to make the initial contact and the initial interaction, all of a sudden they're losing out on this opportunity long term. And it's not just a 1 or 2 months that they're affected by.
Yeah, it's kind of that momentum thing I was talking about. I'd like to tell you that this is a race car that I could flip a switch and go a million miles an hour instantly just by stepping on the gas, and all of a sudden everything's back up to normal. But I'm telling you, it's much more like an ocean liner. It takes a while to turn the ship. And if I can't imagine why anyone would quit. And if their intent is to be in the business next year, then I can't imagine why you would shut down, because at the end of the day, when we look at a lead source, ZBuyer is a perfect example. It's not ungodly expensive, and you can still plan if you want to have a little bit less income in January or February. But again, if you want to be successful in the spring market, you better be getting some leads now. You better be nurturing leads now. And here's the mentality that drives what you and I are talking about. The mentality is the only good leads are right now leads. And if you have that mentality of, well, I probably am not going to sell anything in December anyway, I'm going to turn off my lead source. You're not going to get any right now leads because you turned off your lead source. But worse than that, you're shutting down your nurture. And if you don't have those nurtures, how are you going to be successful in March, April, and May? And it's so challenging to me to try and understand why people would shut down. And is it potentially harder to have a conversation in December than it is in June? Probably. But at the end of the day, I want to also say this. If you have a conversation with a client during the winter, now when I say the winter, that's different for every state. So I actually live in Colorado. Believe it or not, our slow time of the year is July. Why? Well, because Colorado is very much an outdoor kind of place. People like to go outdoors, do that kind of thing. July is the greatest month of the year here as far as being able to. So people stop buying houses sometimes in July in Colorado. So it's just a different mindset around that. And again, you've got to work on what is my long-term goal. If you're going to think short term, I'm only going to get stuff that closes today and in the next 30, 60, 90 days, then you're going to have this up and down thing that happens with real estate, what I refer to as the real estate roller coaster. So you've got to plan for that consistency. And when I look at most agents, I'm just going to do average. I think like the average real estate agent closes 12 transactions a year or some number like that. I don't know. I haven't checked that number recently. But for me, on our team, we want to have people closing approximately 2 deals a month, somewhere between 20 and 25 transactions minimum at all times. But here's the thing, for me to get 2 closings in a month, I need 2 clients. It's not like I need 50 clients. So, I think sometimes people say, well, the leads flow slowed down. Okay, that's okay. But the people who answer the phone in December because they need to buy a house, those are the easy ones. And I know that's kind of an interesting idea. And here's the other great thing. If you can get somebody on the phone in December, talk to them about buying in January and February before everybody else jumps back in the market in March and April. So, there's a lot of advantages for both the buyers, for sellers, and for agents to work the winter time. And, there's less competition, both from agents and from other buyers. So great opportunity as far as I'm concerned. And, just taking a look at it, just reframe that as it's not a slow time of the year. It's an easier time of the year once we get someone who's interested.
Absolutely. And you talk about, what your expectation is for your agents to be in the 20 to 25 closings a year. That averages out to 2 a month. But it's really hard to, have averages and be consistent throughout the year if you shut down your lead gen and all of your marketing for a third of the year, because that's building your 4 to 6 month out pipeline realistically. There's some right now business and online leads. Our source in particular, it's not the biggest source of right now immediate online leads. There's a nurture game involved, and it doesn't affect someone right now as much as it will in 6 months. But in 6 months, all of a sudden, there's going to be a gap in their funnel. There's going to be a deficit in people that they're working with, that they've been building these relationships long term. Matt on Facebook said most agents don't understand that lead gen is long term. It's this whole idea of I'm shutting down right now because I want to slow down during the winter months. And all they're doing is taking away prospecting realistically and building the relationships and the immediate funnel and nurturing that they're doing, but they're hurting their June, their July, their summer months.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that I have a great lead source that I get 100 leads a month and 99 of them want to go buy a house. I don't have that lead source. If I did, no offense, I probably wouldn't be talking to you. I'd be retired sitting on a beach someplace. That's not the reality of our business. The reality of our business is, and again, I go back to this, there's a whole bunch of agents who have been agents for less than 4 years, and they have this perception of what real estate is like as an agent. It's not a good perception. I mean, realistically, 2020 all through about the middle of 2020 through the middle of 2022 is a complete anomaly. In my 20-year career as a real estate agent, that is the strangest, in a good way, market that I've ever seen. And I think there was a whole bunch of agents who were waiting for us to go back to that. If you're waiting for us to go back to that, only one thing is going to cause that: some sort of catastrophe, i.e. a pandemic. So you're basically wishing for pandemic again or some version of that. That's probably not going to happen. At least I hope it doesn't. I don't know about you, but I didn't really care for the pandemic. That being said, what does it mean? That means we have to nurture an online lead. Most of them that close are somewhere between 6 to 18 months out. Now, some of them are longer, and then we have that small percentage that are going to close right away. So everything to me is about nurturing. And here's the thing, we have more automation today than we've ever had. We have more, we have AI, we have all these different things that we didn't used to have. And there's good and bad, and that's a whole other webinar to talk about that. But what I want people to understand is the way to win the real estate game has not changed. And what I mean by that, it's always about building relationships. The more positive relationships you can have, the more closings you're going to have. The more real estate conversations you have on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, the more closings you're going to have. The only way for me to have more real estate conversations is to have more people to talk to. And, so there are people whose business is totally sphere and past clients, and that's awesome for them. But that's really a very few people, to be honest. Most people need some sort of lead generation. And most of us have turned to the online because it's simple. It comes to us and then I take action versus I'll be honest with you, I'm not interested in door knocking. It's not something I enjoy doing. I'm not interested in sitting in an open house. Not something I enjoy doing. I would rather get 100 leads and give them a call and get hung up on and told to go all the things that tell them, and then take those few pieces of gold and get those closings. Because again, if I get 100 leads and I close 1 or 2 of them, that's good math for me. And when you look at return on investment, that's where I think a lot of agents don't spend the time to do that. And I'll disclose, I used to work with one of those extremely high converting lead sources at the same time I was working with you guys, and I had to cancel them. I didn't cancel them because the leads didn't close. The leads closed very well. But even closing an 8-9% closing rate wasn't profitable because the leads got so expensive. So I think that's something a lot of people don't look at. Just because company X is giving you the most amount of closings, is that giving you the most amount of return on your investment? And I think that's what a business is about. It's not about closings. It's not about the top line. It's not about bragging. It's about what can I do to make the most money? At least that's why I go in the business, not necessarily just to do a bunch of work and not make money.
Absolutely. Yeah, Brian, we're a really balanced point in the market compared to other competitors based on our price and then the readiness of our leads and where are they at on the timeline scale of being lead to transaction, and what does that conversion ratio look like? We're by no means the cheapest, but we're also by no means the most expensive platform out there. We're somewhere a fair middle ground, if anything, a little lesser expensive than some of the other platforms. especially if we're looking at referral platforms that you have a fee you're paying just to be a part of the network, and then ridiculously high referrals you're paying on top of the closings. I would say we're a little bit on the lesser expensive side, but with that, we're getting to that point by these leads being earlier on. There is more nurturing that has to go into it. There's a little bit more work on the agent side, and there's a timeline that agents have to be prepared to take on with these leads. And I think that all comes back to this, do you shut down during the winter time or not? If you're using sources like us and you're not in the position that you were in where you're getting these immediate leads, but it's not profitable, you have to continue during the winter time to build out these funnels, these leads, to your point, that are 6 months to a year and a half out. If you shut down now, you're not going to see the immediate impact, but your business will later on. There's no doubt.
Yeah, everything's we have leading indicators and lagging indicators. Closings are a lagging indicator of what I did, in my opinion, 30, 60, 90 days ago, and more towards the 90. So again, if I have a bad July, what do? I look back 90 days and say, what was I doing 90 days ago? If I have a bad January, I need to look back at what I was doing 90 days ago, because ultimately that's how that works. And I wish, that real estate was, I pick up the phone and I call somebody and they all want to go buy and sell houses. But it's a nurture game. And again, I really think that a lot of people were given some unfortunate information, 2-3 years ago about how real estate works. And that's how it worked in that one little blip. And so what we need to understand is this will always be a nurture game. And what I mean by that, no matter what happens with the market, if you're good at long-term nurture, you can be successful. Plain and simple. If that ever changes, I will come back and say so. But, in 20 years, I've never seen nurturing be an unsuccessful thing in our business. And, the beauty of something like ZBuyer too, is we do get some right now business because, you guys have that cash offer coming. When someone goes online and says, I need a cash offer for my house, not 100% of the time, but sometimes it's not a want, and that would be great. Sometimes it's literally a need. And, for a couple of years, we weren't seeing much of that. Why weren't we seeing much of that? Well, the market was doing this on a skyrocket. Now it's normalized. We're seeing 3 to 4% appreciation, which is a typical appreciation over the last 50 years. If you average it out, 3 to 4%. So we're in a normal market for what that's worth. And normal market also means that some people are going to, go into default. I actually am working on the first short sale that I've worked on in approximately 10 years. It's been so long, I don't remember the last one I did. I'm not saying that to be negative. What I'm saying is there is going to be need for a product like yours where people can go and say, I need a cash offer. And then people like me can call them and say, hey, let's get you a cash offer. And I think that we're going to start to see more and more of that. And I think there's a huge opportunity for people to use lead sources like yours where we're solving people's problems. At the end of the day, being a great salesperson is all about solving someone's problem. So people go and fill that form out that says, I need a cash offer. Hey, we can solve that problem for you.
Absolutely. My thought would be is, especially during these few winter months, the people that don't want a cash offer, not the people that are curious about a cash offer, what's my home's worth, but the people that are in a place of need and necessity, I would think there might even be a little bit more immediate business right now, especially during the holiday and the winter time. If there's something drastic that's happening that's driving you towards that cash offer, I would think right now there's a chance to pick up some even more immediate business. And to your point earlier, there's less competition from other agents right now because they are taking winter months off.
Yeah, and let's draw an analogy. I think sometimes as real estate, we get in a bubble of our industry is the only industry that has stuff going on. Well, there's reasons that sometimes people cut stuff like ZBuyer or other lead sources at the end of the year. Because why? Because they're going into a new year and they're like, oh, I better cut this lead source. I want to save money. And you can. I promise you will save money if you cut a lead source. You may make less money. So, what makes more sense? But here's the other thing I want people to think about. We are not the only industry that's going to be laying people off. We are not the only industry that looks at the end of the year and says, hey, we need to spend less money. So guess what? There's going to be people who are going to get laid off. There's going to be people who can't make their payments anymore. And that's a really unfortunate thing. And I'm not saying that we should be vultures about that, but we have an opportunity to help those people. We have an opportunity to get those people back on their feet by helping them with things like cash offers, or again, ZBuyer. Oftentimes, we present cash offers which are a little bit less than than market value, because my investors don't want to buy stuff at market value. That's bad math. But oftentimes, and this is where we've had the most success with ZBuyer, is we go in and give them a cash offer, let's say a $300,000 cash offer, and they say, but you told me my house is worth $375,000. Absolutely. So what we can do, if you'd like, is I'd be happy to show you how I can get you $375,000 for your house instead of $300,000. Is that something you'd be interested in? And honestly, that's the majority of the time what we've done with ZBuyer leads, is we bring those people the cash offer, and the majority of the time they say, no, Brian, it's too low. Great. Now you have an opportunity to be a real estate agent, help these people out of a bad situation, or just out of a situation. I mean, it's not always a bad situation, so that you create a true win-win. You get them market value for the house, and then obviously you make a living.
Absolutely. We had a question in our mastermind group, Brian, and someone said, if I'm still buying leads throughout the wintertime, should I be prospecting more, less, or the same amount? And there's a couple comments that go along with that, talking about concern of, am I calling at a bad time? People are traveling. And it almost sounds like agents are coming up with reasons why they can't prospect more during the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
What's your opinion on that?
So one of my favorite sayings is, I can have reasons or I can have results. So I can sit down and all the things that you just said, hey, it's a hard time you're irritating people because it's a holiday. It's harder to get a hold of some, whatever those things are, they may or may not be true. Here's my question: who cares? And here's what I mean by that. If I'm slower, and what I mean by that is, if I'm not going on as many listing appointments and I'm not going on as many buyer appointments, guess what I have? I have time. And I think all too often people don't consider things that way. One of the things that I learned very early in my real estate career, and I can remember sitting in my house in February of the very first full year that I was in real estate, and I was unemployed. Why was I unemployed? Because I didn't have leads to call. I didn't have prospects to show houses to. I didn't have listing appointments to go on. I was new. I didn't know what to do at that point in time. And I learned quickly, because I was either going to have to quit real estate or live on the street, and I didn't want to do either of those things. So I learned pretty quickly what I needed to do. Ultimately, though, if that's something I think agents need to adopt, is if I don't have a showing, if I don't have paperwork to do, I'm unemployed. If I don't have a listing appointment. And if you're unemployed, here's the great thing: you don't ever have to be unemployed if you have a lead source. I can get on the phone and call those people. Is that going to give me, if I called somebody today, is get me a closing in January? I don't know. But I guarantee you, if I don't call anybody, I won't have a January closing. So I understand that it can be more challenging, and those are the agents who crush it, by the way. And if you're an agent who's relatively new, you don't have a big book of business, you don't have a whole bunch of past clients, this is what you got to do. You've got to, there's a little bit more struggle that comes with it, but ultimately it's person on the phone, and I will say this: I think that too many agents are giving up on the conversation today. It's much harder to get somebody on the phone today than it was 5 years ago. Statistically speaking, the answer rate's about half of what it was 5 years ago. So yeah, I'm going to have to make more dials to have the same number of conversations, but dialing the phone is not hard. I promise you, I can give a 3-year-old a phone and he can dial it. That's not a skill set. So ultimately, you just keep dialing. And when you keep dialing, someone will answer the phone. Everybody has an answer rate. In other words, if I call 100 people out of my database, it's a certain answer rate. You call 100 people out of database, it's a certain answer rate. All I have to do is figure out what percentage that is and figure out how many real estate conversations I need to have every day.
Yeah, I like it. Brian from Facebook said something different, Brian. Something I heard recently that made sense to me: when the market is down, any lead that comes in is more legit, because the fence riders and the jump on the wagon clients are all on the sideline. In a slower market, the leads are more legit in a sense. So I would keep lead gen rolling. And if I were going to cut brand awareness, that doesn't directly translate to money. So again, an interesting piece, similar to what we're talking about right now. The winter times, it could even be a better opportunity for leads with less competition from other agents.
Yeah, and you can do brand awareness marketing. I'm not a fan of it. I'm not Coca-Cola. I don't have a multi-million-dollar monthly budget. I'm just not. And, I think a lot of people want to have a brand and just have people their phone ring with people to call them. I would love that too. I'm just saying it's not a realistic thing. If you look at the top 100 teams across the country, the majority of those teams are doing what you and I are talking about. We're not talking about, hey, how do we sit around and wait for the phone ring? We're talking about going out and prospecting. And marketing theoretically can bring in leads, but I wish it worked that way. I would love to just sit around and answer my phone and set appointments. That is not my experience. It's the other way. I prospect and then I have conversations. And if you I agree. If I'm going to cut budget someplace, it's going to be on branding. It's not going to be on a lead source that allows me to work.
Really good conversation today, Brian. I like it. I think we're right at our time spot here, but I think the consensus is now is certainly not the time to start cutting lead gen. If you do, you're affecting your entire next year, the months to come. And whenever business is down, to your point, look at the past, the last 30, 60, 90 days, and what did you do that caused it to come down? The spring market, agents can hold on to that and spring will be better. I'll be busier then. But that's only if you make it busier for yourself, if you're doing the steps and the actions now to have that positive effect in the future.
100%.
Absolutely. Everyone, thank you so much for sitting in. We do have a promotion running right now for 25% off and a free month of leads. With that, if you go to the link that Jake's put in the chat here, it'll take you there. The website is still not showing the discount, but we're opening it up today. Tomorrow it'll start showing there. If you go ahead and log in though, or start a chat with us, someone from our sales team will be there and they can walk you through it. Answer any questions you have and help you look at your specific area and what we have available.
Yeah. And guys, if you don't know what to say to a Z buyer lead, I've done several posts about it over the last 6 months, and, scripting matters. So show up for the training, be part of the mastermind. And that's one of the reasons that lead sources don't work. It's not because the lead source doesn't work. It's because you're not properly trained on how to handle that lead source. This is a different lead than an open house lead. It's a different lead than some of those other leads that we can buy. And it doesn't make it good or bad. It just makes it different. And you just need to understand how to script it. And honestly, it's one of the easiest phone calls that I make every single time. People aren't pissed off at me calling Z buyer leads. I promise I'm not saying I've never been hung up on, but for the most part, people feel like, oh, this person's reaching out to me because I needed something from them. So pretty powerful way to look at it, and keep that positive mindset through the winter and understand that you can be the agent who has a great winter while everybody else quit.
I love it. Brian, thank you so much for being on here with us. We'll have to schedule something coming up soon. And I think scripting, it could be a good one, especially with what you were just talking about. We're a different lead. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just unique, and you have to have the approach that matches.
Amen.
Everyone, thank you so much. We've got Thanksgiving coming up, so have a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you get to spend lots of time with your family, and we're excited to work with you. Thanks, everyone.
Buy and sell homes, a federal